The first snowfall had just begun to fall when Eliza stood barefoot at the edge of the forest, her thin nightgown clinging to her trembling frame. Her lips quivered not just from the cold, but from the reality she refused to accept. Just an hour ago, her parents had sold her like cattle, to a bitter man from the neighboring village, for the price of a broken cart and a few sacks of grain. "No use keeping a girl who can't give us grandchildren," her mother had muttered coldly, not meeting her eyes. Her father didn't even say goodbye. Eliza was only 22. She had never been kissed. Never known love. And now, because a doctor once said her chances of conceiving were slim, she was treated like discarded fruit. The man they handed her over to, a crooked-toothed butcher with a cruel streak, had tried to drag her into his wagon. But she ran. Into the woods. Into the unknown. Let them come, the cold or the wolves. Anything was better than being with someone who saw her as less than human. Hours passed, and Eliza grew weaker, her legs numb, her breath shallow. When she collapsed near an old cedar stump, she whispered, "If anyone's out there, please. I don't want to disappear like this." She didn't know if she was praying or hallucinating. Darkness pulled at her eyelids. But someone was out there. Miles away, in a wooden cabin nestled between snow-laden trees, a solitary lumberjack named Thomas sat staring at the fire. At 45, he lived alone, speaking only to his dog in the trees. Life had taught him pain, he'd lost his wife during childbirth, and the child hadn't made it either. Since then, he had chosen silence, solitude, and a steady rhythm of chopping wood to keep his heart from cracking. That night, as if summoned by a force beyond comprehension, his dog Duke began barking wildly at the door. "Quiet down," Thomas grumbled, but when the dog refused to stop, something compelled him to step out. That's when he saw her. A crumpled figure against the snow, lifeless, fragile, like a bird fallen from the sky. He carried her in with the gentleness one would use for something sacred. Days passed before Eliza awoke, her eyes fluttering open to a low fire, the scent of pine wood, and a strange warmth around her. "You're safe," said a voice rough like gravel but kind like summer rain. Eliza blinked. "Where am I?" "In my home. Found you in the woods. You nearly died out there." She burst into tears. For once, they were tears of relief. Over the next weeks, Thomas nursed her back to health. He never asked questions she wasn't ready to answer. He simply chopped wood, left warm meals by her side, and occasionally offered stories about the forest, the stars, and a past he rarely shared. Eliza, in return, told him what had happened, not all at once, but in bits and pieces. How her parents never saw her as a person, just a future mother of children. How one diagnosis turned her from beloved daughter to a burden. Thomas listened, silently. When she finally asked, "Do you think a woman who can't have children is still worthy of love?" he answered without hesitation, "You are worthy because you breathe. That's all." And with those words, something began to heal inside her. Months passed. Eliza found strength again, helping Thomas with chores, planting seeds in the small greenhouse, laughing softly at Duke's antics. For the first time, she felt seen, not for what her body could or couldn't do, but for who she was. One spring morning, she stood by the river with Thomas, watching the water rush by. "I used to think I was broken," she said, "until I came here." Thomas nodded. "I used to think love had no place left in my life. I was wrong too. They didn't need grand declarations." The quiet way he reached for her hand, the way she leaned into his shoulder, it said everything. A year later, the village heard whispers. About the infertile girl, who was now the heart of a warm, thriving home in the woods. About the lonely lumberjack who smiled again, who built cribs not for babies, but for orphaned animals and lost children Eliza would bring home. They became a beacon for those society had cast aside, not just surviving, but showing others that love wasn't defined by biology, but by presence, by kindness, by choice. When Eliza's parents showed up one day, older and broken by regret, asking to see her, she met them with calm eyes. "You gave me away because you thought I had no worth. But I found someone who saw me differently, and in doing so, I found myself." And she didn't need to say more. Sometimes the most powerful truths are the ones that don't scream. Eliza and Thomas never had children of their own, but they raised lives, wounded hearts, abandoned souls, and even forest animals that came limping to their door. Their cabin pulsed with laughter, music, and the kind of peace that doesn't come from having everything, but from realizing you already have enough. She was once sold as damaged. Now, she was someone's miracle. And in the quiet of that forest, where pain had once whispered lies, love now sang the loudest.